Dick Clark always appeared to be America's sweetheart, clean-cut, wholesome, the perfect host whose smile seemed incapable of hiding anything. But in 1960, during a closed-door meeting with record executives, he reportedly made a remark so jarring that several co-workers walked out and never returned to American Bandstand. The moment, quietly recorded and buried for decades, suggested a far harsher line between who Clark believed belonged on his show and who didn't. For some, it changed the way they viewed him forever. Clark was born on November 30, 1929 in Bronxville, New York, and raised in a calm middle-class home in Mount Vernon. His father worked at radio stations, and his mother stayed home, creating a peaceful environment where Clark nurtured an early fascination with sound and speech. At 10 years old, he already knew he wanted to be in radio. Determined to begin immediately, he cobbled together a tiny studio in his basement, using an old stove as a microphone and repurposing discarded scripts from his father. That improvised setup lit the first spark of ambition that would never die out. His youth, though steady and comfortable, was shaken at 15 when his older brother Bradley, a 47 Thunderbolt pilot, was killed in the Battle of the Bulge. The news reached the family through neighbors offering condolences. That loss carved something heavy into Clark. The silence left behind by his brother hardened his drive. He became the surviving son, carrying a sense of duty that shaped how fiercely he pursued success. At A.B. Davis High School, he wasn't particularly distinguished academically, but the debate team awakened something in him. He discovered how to command attention with pauses, how to mask nerves with a steady voice. People gravitated toward his polite, soft-spoken confidence. By graduation in 1947, he was already working in the mailroom at WRUN in Utica, the station managed by his father and owned by his uncle. Although family connections helped him through the door, Clark was determined to earn his place. When the station's weatherman went on vacation, he was ready and stepped in. Reading the weather live, clutching cue cards with shaking hands, he gained his first real on-air confidence. The shadow of his brother never left him. It pushed him to avoid wasting time. While others socialized, Clark worked weekends, took extra shifts, and accepted any small opportunity to polish his craft. Despite working at a family-linked station, he hated the implication of nepotism so much that he changed his on-air name to Dick Clay during college. Clark enrolled at Syracuse University in 1947, choosing advertising as his major and radio as his minor. Tuition strained his finances, so he took low-paying radio jobs, hosting weekend shows for $1 an hour. By 1951, he had his own country music program, The Wolfram Buckaroos, and continued practicing at the campus station. He wasn't just learning radio, he was living inside it. At Syracuse, he also became a DJ for fraternity sock hops and campus parties, charging small entry fees and learning crowd psychology in real time. Those parties became his laboratory. He figured out how to read a room, when to bring up the energy, and when to let silence work. All of those lessons would follow him into television. After graduation, Clark turned down a safer advertising job and returned to broadcasting. His first major break came on WKTV in Utica, hosting a low-budget country-themed show that paid very little, but allowed him to handle everything from weather reports to comedy skits. He stayed at WKTV even when better offers came, determined to build his reputation on his own terms. By 1952, at 22, Clark moved to Philadelphia to work at WFIL Radio. He lived cheaply, earning $35 a week, but his persistence paid off. By 1954, he became the substitute host of the radio version of Bandstand. 2 years later, when original TV host Bob Horn was removed after a drunk driving arrest and a scandal, Clark took over. On July 9, 1956, at age 26, he stepped into the spotlight. His friendly manner, groomed appearance, and ability to talk effortlessly to teenagers made the show explode in popularity. The audience grew from thousands to millions. But behind the polished image were strict rules. Boys had to wear suits, girls had to wear dresses. The wholesome image that advertisers loved also excluded teens from less affluent backgrounds and very often teens of color. Clark also inherited the industry's pay-for-play culture, accepting gifts from record labels in exchange for airtime. The scandal erupted nationally in 1959, and Clark eventually had to testify before Congress. He survived the hearings by divesting from dozens of music companies he had invested in and denying direct wrongdoing. But the event marked the first major crack in his spotless reputation. American Bandstand continued to dominate the 1950s and early 1960s. Clark had enormous influence. A single appearance on the show could transform a song into a chart-topping hit overnight. His Saturday primetime show expanded his reach. He also made business deals with several young performers, taking large royalty shares, sometimes up to 50%, in exchange for exposure. Many criticized these arrangements as exploitative. Black artists often face greater obstacles. Although Clark later claimed he integrated the show in 1959, the studio audience remained almost entirely white until the mid-1960s. Black dancers were often turned away or limited to very small numbers on air. Some performers recalled being placed at the back of the stage or receiving less camera time. Clark reportedly justified certain choices as keeping the show clean for parents, language that often reinforced the network's quiet preference for a white, non-controversial image. Clark continued building his empire through the 1960s and 1970s with new shows, business ventures, and even acting roles. Some projects were successful, but others quickly faded. Despite occasional failures, he steadily expanded his control in television until he became as much a producer and mogul as a host. Then came the show that defined his later career, New Year's Rockin' Eve. The first broadcast in 1972 reimagined the holiday for younger audiences, replacing ballroom orchestras with rock acts and countdown energy. Clark's calm, cheerful presence became a New Year's tradition. Even mishaps, like the balloon drop failure in 1981 that buried him on live TV, only strengthened his appeal. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Clark's company grew into a television powerhouse. It produced thousands of hours of programming and generated enormous revenue from annual events. Yet lawsuits from dancers, employees, and performers surfaced over the years, highlighting issues ranging from unpaid residuals to unauthorized use of likenesses. Clark lived with type 2 diabetes from the mid-1990s and suffered a severe stroke in 2004 that affected his speech and movement. Although he missed that year's New Year's broadcast, he returned in 2005, visibly changed but determined to continue. For several years he co-hosted with Ryan Seacrest, gradually stepping back while remaining a symbolic presence. He died on April 18, 2012 at age 82, from a heart attack following a medical procedure. His estate was valued at around $100 million, and later that year Dick Clark Productions was sold for hundreds of millions more. After his death, reassessments of his influence grew louder. Some praised his contributions to music and television,